Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hal Shurtleff. I'm the Regional Field Director for the John Birch Society. I live in the city of Boston. And for the last 2 years, I've done dozens of presentations on the subject of Agenda 21. I've been fortunate enough to travel to the Midwest and New England and many of the other Atlantic states, giving this talk to giving a full-blown presentation on the subject. And the last few months, here we are, February of 2013, I've decided to start focusing on fighting it, and specifically fighting Agenda 21 in your community. So this presentation is going to deal with how to identify it and how to fight it. But before that, I want to recommend some things that you should be viewing or reading. One of them is a little videotape, a little short presentation, 20 minutes long, put out by the John Birch Society, Agenda 21 and how it affects you. It's also available on YouTube, but it's probably one of the best introductions to Agenda 21 that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them. We came out with a little booklet about 1.5 years ago, Agenda 21 and You, and put out written by Christian Gomez, also available in a PDF format. This is a great little introduction to the subject as well. It talks about smart growth and some other terms that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. Then an article that the John Birch Society's publication, The New American, did back in February of 2011. And the author of this article was one of the attendees, one of the media attendees at the Rio conference back in 1992. So he's probably one of the nation's foremost experts on the subject. A lot of other great things, and I'll be talking about some as we go. But I want to mention that a very important book written by a friend of ours, Dr. Michael Kaufman from Bangor, Maine, Saviors of the Earth. This book was published in the early mid-90s, and it's basically a history book of the environmental movement, the good, the bad, the ugly, what have you, and a very important book to understand this issue. It's currently out of print, but I found it available on Amazon for as low as a penny a piece. And then many of you that are involved in this are familiar of a group called Democrats Against UN Agenda 21. The lady who heads the organization is a liberal Democrat. So some of her views that she expresses in her book may not be consistent with many of our views. Nevertheless, she has to be commended because she's been traveling around the country, in fact around the world, exposing Agenda 21, and we need a lot more folks than we have now. So we do need Democrats. We do need people who may be considered on the left to be involved in this. And I just finished reading this book very recently, Behind the Green Mask. I highly recommend it. Available on her website and also on Amazon. So just a few of the things that I recommend. So here you see a picture here on the screen of one of our outreach campaigns up in Belfast, Maine very recently. So a workshop on stopping Agenda 21. First you need to understand the issue, and I know the fact that you're here. Most of you have already you're up on the issue to some extent. Although I do welcome people who are still new to this, and I'm glad you're here as well. How to identify Agenda 21's various entities in your town, county, and state. You will very seldom see the term Agenda 21, but when I finish this presentation, you'll be able to identify it, or at least have a better chance at it. Identify others in your community who may be working to oppose Agenda 21 or aspects of Agenda 21, and also to communicate with local officials, elected, appointed. Communicate with the local media. You know, there are most towns have weekly newspapers or small daily newspapers that be very receptive. And even when they're not, the fact is that they come and do a story about your activities, your presentations, your video showing, and they don't have a sympathetic or at least neutral approach, that's okay too. There's also a lot of online news services like Patch, which is owned by AOL, I think. And you have things like Wicked Local. A lot of weekly newspapers have that. So these are things that are online. There's still the cable TV, public access, that's available, that we can put our videotapes like this on. Hosting educational meetings at local venues. Sponsor videos on the subject at the local access station. Sponsor outreach events, and I'll give you some examples of that. Distribute information by targeting individuals, opinion molders, and the general public with flyers, pamphlets, and other DVDs and other things. In fact, just recently we had we designed a flyer specifically for the town of Thomaston, Maine, and we went out and distributed these, and we made sure that the elected officials got them on their doorsteps as well as in their inboxes at the town hall. On cyberspace, making use of the Facebook groups and other things. So first off, let's identify Agenda 21. Here's an example here, Granite State Future. You live in New Hampshire, it's the nickname of this called the Granite State. Well, it sounds pretty nice, Granite State Future, and there's a little, what's what the map looks like made out of granite. That's pretty nice. What's wrong with that? Well, if you go to the Granite State Future website, and you'll start seeing some of these buzzwords and terms, and I'll mention a few, and you'll see these in other websites. Smart growth, let me just read them. Sustainable development. This is the term you'll see everywhere. You see, so if you see this term, sustainable development, you know that Agenda 21 is in your town or your county or state. Public-private partnerships. Now, this is an old term. It's not something invented at the UN, but when you see this in alignment with sustainable development, then you have to cause for concern here. Conservation easements. Gee, that's not, what's wrong with a conservation easement? You mean, gee, now I got 100 acres of land and I'm going to make sure that some of this is not going to be developed, and that's all well and good, but you sell one of these things and you just lost your property rights and you didn't even know it. And your local NGO will come in and say, hey, everything's great, and next thing you know, they sold that. They can sell those easements to the federal government. And then you completely lost your rights, your property rights, right? Open space committees. Many towns around the country have these entities, and again, I think it's important to preserve space, open space. I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but what's motivating it? Where's the money coming from? And the open space also means your property. I happen to be involved with an entity that has some property in the town of Lexington. I wasn't directly involved with the contract, but when I learned after the fact that in order to do some landscaping, to take an ugly yard that was overgrown with thickets and weeds, the project was $13,000, and then the fees, and the landscaper was told by the town that you can't plant certain things that they wanted to plant. So he owned a piece of property, but you really don't have that many rights on the property, and Lexington happens to be a green community in Massachusetts and also a member of ICLEI. Mixed-use housing. Okay, what does that mean? It means when a town decides to become a green community or a smart growth area, they're going to be putting up these housing developments, usually using federal money from HUD or state money, and it's going to be mixed use. So they're going to have Section 8 people coming in. They're going to have little stores in the bottom of these things, very little parking. How about alternative energy? Now, there's nothing wrong with alternative energy if you're paying for it, if it's privately subsidized, but a lot of this stuff, this alternative energy, is it's wasteful. Taxpayers' money is being used. These big wind turbines that are making people sick, and they're not really going to be the wave of the future, but these are some of the terms you'll see these towns adopting these alternative energy things. How about climate change? You look at the websites of towns like Dedham, Massachusetts, and they actually have an environmental officer they've hired not too long ago. And they use this term climate change. In other words, we have to modify the way we do things in this town because of global warming. Well, we know there is no man-made global warming, but you wouldn't know that if you were to look at the state of Massachusetts, for example, and look at this thing called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. This particular nonprofit has about 9 to 10 states that belong to it, and these states' governments tell utilities how much carbon they can burn per year or release into the atmosphere, and they sell carbon credits. And they take the profits, after your bill has gone up, they take the profits to subsidize their favorite private and public sector entities, you see. They're not going to give you the money back. They might give it to that greenie down the street that will put the solar panels on. And by the way, you put the solar panels on, you now sell carbon credits to your utility. Isn't that wonderful? It's called a fraud and a hoax, and under normal circumstances this would be outlawed. Okay, transit villages, and this is an interesting term that Rose LaCroix makes a lot of use of here. These notion that you have a transit village. There's one I don't have on here. It's called a boutique city. A boutique city, like Nashua, New Hampshire, has been defined, May have been a mill town at one time. There may have been a lot of industry, so you got a lot of big fat buildings that are empty. And what do we do with these wonderful buildings? Turn them into stack them and pack them, right? ICLEI, International Council for Local Environmental Initiative. This is the entity founded at the UN back in 1990 for the purpose of promoting Agenda 21 at the local town level, all over the world, circumventing state governments in some cases, and definitely Congress. Actually, this the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative was never authorized by Congress, and it's unconstitutional. But ICLEI, when a town belongs to ICLEI, it makes it much easier for us to identify the problem. We almost welcome that, because then you know you've got some serious problems. How about green jobs? You'll see this a lot too. You know, we're going to build this, we're going to become a smart growth town or a community because we're going to have green jobs. We're going to boost the economy. Well, there's been numerous studies done on the notion of green jobs, and some economists will say that it usually means that 3 or 4 other vibrant jobs that are free market driven will go under the way to provide one green job. Let me give you an example. Massachusetts, $65 million of the taxpayers' money was used to subsidize one business. It was called Evergreen. They made panels, solar panels. And after 5 years, the company said, we can't do business in the state anymore. We're going to move to communist China. Well, they didn't say communist China. So all those so-called green jobs cost the taxpayers lots of money, and now they've been lost. And by the way, let's address this green issue. I think anybody, any business owner or resident, with some responsible individual, wants to maximize their resources. They don't want to waste things. They don't want to cut down nice, clean, nice, beautiful trees if they don't need to. So a lot of this is, and I use the term green hustle. Lots of businesses are buying into this notion to get the contracts. Isn't that they're dedicated disciples of Al Gore, but they've been bought into this green jobs now. Land trusts. There are some land trusts that do very good work, but most of them do not. Most of them are collaborating with various entities, federal and state entities, promoting Agenda 21. Green codes. When a town or a city or a county buys into this Agenda 21, they will have new building codes, and in many cases the new codes will make it impossible for you to sell or to repair or to add on an addition, what have you. Future Earth is another term. Agenda 21 is becoming exposed now. Lots of people know about it. So now they have to repackage it. Future Earth, that's the term they've used. Permit banks. This was a new term, new to me, until I was up in Rockland, Maine, not too long ago, and I saw a storefront called the Island Institute, and saw the word sustainable. I said, okay, now I got to check this out. I went in there and I got a copy of their little packet of information, and I saw the term permit bank. And I asked some of the folks up in the area who have been very knowledgeable about this Agenda 21 and various aspects of it. I said, what's a permit bank? And they didn't know, and I didn't know either until I looked it up. Permit bank is where a person, this entity, will actually buy permits, fishing permits. So you donate your money to this wonderful land trust that's going to save Maine, and they will buy fishing permits. And I bet you they're not going to sell a whole lot of them or make them available to the fishermen here. Stretch codes. Well, what's that? Well, by the way, we're not necessarily against legitimate building codes. In towns and cities or what have you. That should be up to the local people, though, what they're going to do. But a stretch code, for example, a town has become a sustainable community. They establish smart growth zones. These would be areas in that town where they do allow lots of development, but it will only be limited to that zone. And the stretch codes will say, look, usually, let's say it's whatever the term is. Let's say you have 5 housing units per acre or something like that, whatever that may be. But in the smart growth zone, they may say, hey, we can have 50 units per acre or per 2 acres or what have you. So they stretch the building codes to accommodate. But if you're outside the smart growth area, forget it. You know, you've got conservation easements, you've got conservation land, and you can't do much building at all. Smart meters. These are the 2 or 3 watt radio stations that they've hooked up with the utility companies and actually using them now, not just for electricity but for water and for other things. These are ways that they tell you, they can monitor your use, and woe to you if you are using a little more energy than your neighbors, because they will send you a little note letting you know that. And I've heard cases where if you're using a little bit more than you should, that's subject to a search warrant because you might have an illegal business, or maybe harboring people that shouldn't be there, what have you. Permaculture. Here's a term that I was testifying in New Hampshire, and the only member of this committee that had any questions, he was a first-term state rep, he asked me if I knew what permaculture was, and I didn't hear the term. And then before I finished right after my testimony, somebody got onto their smartphone and said permaculture is sustainable agriculture. That's so look for terms like visionary sessions or charrettes. In fact, the term visionary session has been so controversial that they're now using the term charrette. Charrette's a nice French word, you see. So you think of a charrette, you think you're sitting there with your cafe, your little coffee and your beret, reading a copy of The Nation magazine and giving your input, you see. But it really is the same as a visionary session. Here, Plan New Hampshire is one of the entities that goes to these towns and they invite what they call stakeholders. They don't have necessarily the general public, but they have people who are already committed to this. Maybe a contractor who's going to be building in the smart growth zone, maybe a landscape architect, maybe the local greenie activist or what have you. And some people who just don't know what's going on. So, and when they finish with this, they get all the ideas from the input from the community. And then the selectmen will be told, hey, the community supports this, so change the zones, change this, get that federal money to do this, and to have these restrictions on our freedoms. Although they don't use the, say, restrictions on our freedoms. Sounds very flowery. And here's an example. If you go to Plan New Hampshire's website, you can actually download the so-called charrettes in these various towns. And it's interesting, though, the first 5 or 6 years they used the term visionary session. That gets too controversial. Now it's charrette. So you'll see the first 5 or 6 years visionary sessions, and from the last 4 or 5 years it'll be charrettes. Well, the town of Rindge, New Hampshire is one particular place to do a charrette. And these are the same. The town is different. The geography may be a little different, but it's the same plan. You see, defining a town center, and it talks about where the smart growth is, and areas that we need to have conservation restrictions and all that, and where you can get the money. We do want private sector money, they might say, but they encourage you to get money from the various non-NGOs and, of course, federal entities and state entities. Agenda 21 in Greater Albany, it's called the Capital Region Sustainability Plan. Sounds very nice, and this is being promoted by Andrew Como, the son of Mario. Andrew had been the director of HUD under Bill Clinton, so he knows a whole lot about Agenda 21, and you will never see the term Agenda 21 here. We're getting a lot of resistance to this, a lot of success in that area. So here's ICLEI, and you go to their website and see if your town or your town or city or county belongs to it. ICLEI again stands for the International Council for Local Environmental Initiative. And we've been able to get lots of towns and cities removed in the last 2 years. I think about 150. In many cases, we realize that the town has left ICLEI, but they'll still be listed on their website. So also look for local membership in nationwide organizations. Here's one called Sustainable Communities online. And you can go there and see if your town or city may be a so-called sustainable community. You also may look for cool cities, cool mayors, cool cities, and these are other sustainable type entities. Local organizations pushing Agenda 21, and the town of Greenfield, or the city of Greenfield, Massachusetts, which is in the western part of the state, they have something called Greening Greenfield. And I went to their website and I sent them an email. I said, how did Greenfield become a member of ICLEI? Now, they actually had been a member of ICLEI, but they got out, but it's still completely into sustainable development. And the nice lady got back to me who works for this, and she said, oh, we're the ones that got the town or the city to buy it, to support ICLEI. And we were a member for a few years, and now, but basically we don't need ICLEI now. We've got everything done. And then she asked me, "Are you planning to bring ICLEI into your town?" And I said, "No, I'm not going to." So look for local organizations. Maybe if whatever town you might put down, if you live in the Midwest, Sustainable Kansas, Sustainable Columbus, Ohio, or wherever you may be. See if you have those connections, and you'd be surprised. I was out in Indiana where I was told, "Hey, this is sort of we're conservatives out here. We're not crazy like you people in the Northeast." They didn't know there was Sustainable Indianapolis, or there was a Sustainable Columbus, Columbus, Ohio. So they've learned a lot by by just simply going to their website. Look at your town's website and see what they have on there. Yeah, this is something we found in Connecticut. Green schools. Isn't this nice? You've got the solar panels and the wind turbine. By the way, that wind turbine is going to make the students sick, so you better turn that baby off. Okay. A lot of universities are pushing this. I would say all of them, if they're state-controlled universities. Here, a Sustainable Energy Institute for Sustainable Energy, based at Eastern University, Eastern Connecticut State University. So, look at the colleges if you have a college in your area. Okay, and we discovered this after the fact that they had a big conference at this university in Connecticut back in April of last year. If we had wind of this beforehand, we could have organized maybe some activity to sort of add a little truth to what they were getting here. New Jersey, I happen to have spoken in New Jersey a number of times, and in fact just very recently. Now New Jersey only has maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 ICLEI towns, but they have something called Sustainable New Jersey, and they have well over 100 towns that belong to this. Thankfully, as a result of the visibility being raised on this, lots of towns have left. Town websites, look for sustainable committees, open space committees, and others. And just so I recommend you go to your town website or your city website and see what they have to say about it. Okay. Massachusetts, we have something called the Massachusetts Green Communities, passed by our great and general court, where, of course, I'm a Boston resident, several years ago. And you actually will go to their website and see a link to ICLEI. So a lot of towns, we have about 120 towns out of 365 towns that have bought into this to some extent. So we've had some success. Many towns have said no to it, and hopefully we'll be getting more towns to pull out. And in some states, like Massachusetts, like New York, that are, you consider that sort of an intellectual closed shop or an ideological closed shop at the state house level, your best bet is to fight it locally. We've had a lot of success in these very liberal type towns, states, but we've had a lot of local success. And I use the term liberal, but there will be some liberals that will oppose this. So it's not just a left-right issue, as many people think. Now, many people are on Facebook, and you get lots of good information on Facebook if you use it right, and the various groups on Facebook. There are some great groups on Facebook fighting Agenda 21. In fact, there's one called Fighting Agenda 21 in the USA, and many states have little subdivisions of that, Fighting Agenda 21 in Maine, in Massachusetts, or what have you. And these are places where people will be posting information, and you should be on these sites getting up-to-date information as well, and also networking with like-minded people in your area and the whole country. I mean, somebody contacted me from Central Ohio just recently, saw a video I had posted, and wants to get involved and wants to get people, wants to organize activities. Happens to me all the time. So here are some groups I recommend on Facebook. Stop UN Agenda 21, Stop ICLEI. I happen to be one of the administrators of this. I think it has 6,000 or more people that visit this on a regular basis, and more people all the time. And again, I get a lot of information I post up there. Choose Freedom, Stop Agenda 21. That's the John Birch Society's Facebook page, and I recommend that. And I said earlier, Fighting Agenda 21 in the USA and the various states. And there's something called Moms Against Agenda 21. Then there's a page that says it's entitled Get the U.S. Out of the UN. This is a relatively new page, and we've got several thousand members. And then you have local and regional newspapers that have Facebook pages where you can post information. In fact, I recommend if you write a letter to the newspaper, the hard copy newspaper, they may or may not run it, but if you can take that letter, copy and paste it on that newspaper Facebook page. And also towns and cities. Most towns and cities also have Facebook pages where you can post information. I do it all the time, and get lots of results from this too. In fact, I was posting a letter in the Ringe, New Hampshire Facebook page, and it got a lot of the so-called progressives pretty upset. And it was like 10 against 1. How they were just sending me these, posting these nasty things. And along the way, I made a lot of friends in that town, and had people who were thanking us and thanking me for exposing what was happening in that town. So you get up to date information from these groups. Maybe some success stories that could be replicated in your town or your state or what have you, and you post your activities and results. You know, something like just delivering a handful of material to the selectmen, and you mention that, it's encouraging to people. Get ideas. All kinds of people being, you know, we got a lot of talented people in this country. A lot of people are doing things a little differently than we may be doing it. Hey, let's do it here. And you can promote ideas. Hopefully people will see what's happening or we're doing and say, hey, I like what you're doing, what can I do here? And then implement ideas. You get lots of people out there that will help. They'll actually, hey, I'll show up for that event, I'll go out there and do that outreach with you. And so that's why these things are important. So copy and paste videos and articles and comments. I have what I call a Google alert. I know there are others, so you can do an alert for Agenda 21, and an article pops up somewhere in cyberspace, good, bad, or indifferent on the subject. Post it, and make sure you go to that newspaper or that online source and make comments. Okay, find like-minded folks and network. Okay, so lots of people belong to these Facebook pages, and they might make comments. Get to know them. Go in there and say, hey, I saw your comment. Great job. Copy and paste your news releases and letters. I mentioned that a lot to the editor or to the Facebook pages of the newspapers. TV, news, online news sources such as Patch. Post info on the pages of politicians. So there's a lot of politicians have their Facebook pages. Do the same thing. And I don't think most of these politicians even look at their Facebook pages, but lots of people do. Now I say put worms on your hooks. Now what I mean by that is that when you post something, a video or an article or what have you, pick something like, hey, would you like a copy of this DVD? It's available. Give me a call. Here's my contact information. Feel free to use mine. Feel free to use mine if you're a little reluctant to do that. I've had people as far as Canada, various provinces in Canada have contacted me to get material. I've had people as far as California, Texas, Florida, the Midwest on a regular basis. And then we put people in touch with them. There are activists, freedom activists all over the country. You may not be able to give a presentation yourself, but we know people in Texas and California and Florida and what have you that can do these things. So when you put something out there, make sure you encourage them to contact it. If you want to do a presentation like this in your town, give us a call. We'll put you in touch with some people. Meetup groups. Meetup maybe not as influential as it was 5 or 6 years ago, but still lots of people are doing it. And on meetup groups and other social media, lots of people are on these sites on a regular basis, and you can also join. I would say you can't join everything, but maybe find 1 or 2 or 3 that you can actually post on a regular basis. Okay. There's also, I belong to something called Patriot Action Network, and it's a nationwide group. They also have statewide groups. And so there's a lot, and I post information up there, and lots of people are watching the videos or reading the material I'm posting, and I'm getting people there as well to be interested in what we're doing. Media. Now, visit the reporter of the local newspaper. And as I said earlier, almost every town, with some sizable towns or regions, have local weekly newspapers. And these local newspapers are doing pretty well. Well, most of the large dailies are going under or losing circulation. The local papers, because the people in these towns read these things. So you have an event, get a hold of these people. Let them know who you are. They're always looking for a story. And I was in Rockland County, New York, in a library, and a reporter from the weekly paper showed up. He actually was on covering something else, and he happened to see the flyer posted, and he said he sat in the meeting, and he gave us a great story. It was just the where, the whens, the hows, and whos, and whats. There wasn't any bias, and that was unusual. but he happened to see the flyer. But you know, we're going to get to know this reporter, and we'll be able to get our stories, their articles on a regular basis. I would suggest that you create a media email contact list. So if you live, and let's say wherever you may live, maybe go out a few counties or a few miles, 20 or 30 mile radius. And some people, of course, have email lists for the whole state, and that's good too. And make sure you send links like from YouTube or Vimeo on the subject, or PDF articles, or from Scribd or what have you. Cable TV. If you have cable TV in your town, there's got to be a public access station, and that station just means that, public access. That means you can take a DVD down there, you fill out a form, they have to show that DVD as long as you're meeting all the requirements, and just like everybody else, and they will show these, and there's lots of great videos, DVDs out there. I mentioned earlier Google Alerts, so you know when something is happening in your area. If it's on cyberspace, it's a good chance that Google Alerts will pick it up. Post videos and articles in the comments section on online articles, articles and newspapers on Agenda 21. Never be rude or sarcastic. Leave that to our opponents. You are posting to those who read between the lines. So if you get an article that may be hostile, sarcastic, and that's basically what the game plan is for the mainstream media. They first ignore the issue. Now that it's becoming controversial, now they're writing articles about it, but they're using ridicule, conspiracy theories. Oh, do you think a farmer's market is a UN plot? And they make it sound ridiculous. But that's a good sign, because it makes a sign that we're actually making progress here. So I don't go on there and call them names. I just go on there and I'll say, here's a great short video clip, maybe the video that I recommended here, that the John Birch Society put out. One of them I uploaded on my YouTube channel. It's called Agenda 21 for Public Officials. That's a 14-minute slide presentation with a voiceover by John Anthony. Highly recommend that. So just copy and paste it. Or you might say, for those interested in learning more about it, here's a website, here's a phone number, here's an email address, and that's the purpose of it. So I wouldn't spend time debating all the people that have nothing else better to do than to get onto these sites. But we also want the opposition know that there's a lot of people out there opposing this, that the opposition is growing, and lots of potential allies out there too. And what to post, and I mentioned Agenda 21 for Elected Officials by John Anthony. JBS videos, go to the JBS website, jbs.org/Agenda 21, and you'll see a number of videos, including an interview of the president of ICLEI, that when he was at Rio 20 just this past June of 2012. The New American magazine, the newamerican.com, all kinds of great articles that have been archived, and there's of course very recent articles that you can copy and paste on these websites. Articles and videos by Dr. Michael Kaufman, Tom DeWeese, who's just recovering from some surgery, so thankfully he'll be back out on track in a few months. Michael Shaw, he's got a lot of great material, a lot of great books and articles and videos as well. And I mentioned Democrats Against UN Agenda 21. Also a man who just passed away within the last year, Henry Lamb. He was one of the pioneers opposing Agenda 21, so just do a search for these folks and you'll find more than you'll ever have in a lifetime probably. Outreach events. This is something that takes a little organizational effort. You have to have the right material. And here's a picture of an outreach event we did, the John Birch Society did in Belfast, Maine. And first you want to pick a relatively busy area. You don't want to do it on a dead-end street. You want to have materials. You want to have something to hand them. You may have to design something that's specific to that town. Like in Belfast, had been a member of ICLEI. Notice I use the term had been, the past tense, past participle of the term, because they're no longer a member. So we designed something that let people in that town know that they belong to ICLEI, or that city. We send out news releases a week in advance. Make sure you get the deadlines. If it's a weekly paper that comes out on a Thursday, the deadline might be the previous Friday. So we need to have that information available. Then you create the events on Facebook and other social media networks. And even if you don't get a whole lot of people out, it doesn't matter. You're getting the visibility. but our event in Belfast, we had about, I don't know, 12 to 15 people. It was only lasted about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we got lots of material, and we had 2 newspaper articles about the event. And as we were handing things out, we got a call from City Hall. The lady at City Hall said, "We left Ickley already. We've been out for a while." And I said to her, "Well, it's still listed on the website, and within a few hours or maybe a few days, the city officials called Ickley International and had their name removed." So we thought it was quite a success story. And we're doing these things on a regular basis. Nashua, New Hampshire, last March of 2012. Very cold Saturday morning, we went in front of City Hall. The City Hall was closed, but our goal isn't to let these city officials, they're the ones that gave Ickley to us in Nashua. They know what they're doing. The job is we have to educate people in the city of Nashua and others in New Hampshire. And we had several very favorable newspaper articles. We put a lot of material out, got a lot of visibility, and I like to think that was probably the first time there was any serious opposition. And today, there's quite a large group of people who are fighting Agenda 21 in New Hampshire. But it has to start somewhere. Visit town and city halls. These city halls also belong to you. They're not the domain of those on the other side of the spectrum here, or the other side of the issue. Leave information. If you can make an appointment to see a selectman, maybe you know that person personally. They may be your neighbor, okay? Leave the information with the mayor, the selectmen, the planning board members, and all the other elected and appointed officials. Look for evidence of Agenda 21. Go into that town hall and see if there's some of the things I mentioned, if there's posters or some type of evidence of Agenda 21. Bring a camera or video camera. Cell phones will do for evidence. And I bring a video camera to a lot of these places. I've done short little video clips. I did one in Newburyport, and I think for a whole year it was up there with a couple hundred views. All of a sudden, things are heating up in Newburyport, and it becomes a story in the local online, and I think the daily, weekly newspaper too. So lots of people have watched that little video clip I did. It was a picture of a giant check from the state of Massachusetts. In other words, if you join Ickley and become a green community, you get lots of taxpayers' money. So here is an example of going green in Wellesley. Wellesley is a little bedroom community outside of Boston. And I went in there and I discovered they have a full-time environmental officer, and all of the go green type displays they have there, all promoting bad science and trying to scare the daylights out of people if they don't buy into this nonsense. Interesting how most of these projects are in upper middle class communities too, around the world actually, not just in the United States, but specifically a lot in the United States. Here is the copy of a check. So I was looking for evidence, and it was pretty easy because it was this gigantic check, and basically it says that if you join, we're going to give you taxpayers' money. And I'm working on. I got a little video clip that was sent to me by one of an activist freedom activist in Carver, Massachusetts, a cable TV show about going green, and it had one of the supporters of this use the term bribe. He said we have to bribe people to buy into this. So I'm going to probably have that when I update the presentation here. So, and you visit your city and town halls, leave information in your wake. Here's a little bumper sticker we created. Put them up on the bulletin board, you see. Attend town meetings. Many of these town meetings, you don't show up. Only people that show up are the people pushing this. So the selectmen and the planners and the other folks there think, hey, everybody must agree to this. There's consensus, we must do it. And in some cases, so you have open space committees, visionary sessions, charrettes. Attend these things. In fact, if you're going to attend one of these charrettes, you need to get a little bit of understanding of how it works. And I recommend visiting anything by Beverly Eekman. She's an expert on the subject of how to deflect these things. Actually, Behind the Green Mask, the book I recommended just a few minutes ago, has some really good stories about how to successfully deflect these visionary sessions. So don't just go in there like you're going to throw a stink bomb. You got to go in there with the right. But it can be done very easily. You just have to do it right. A lot of these people are looking for members of the board. Sometimes they have elections and people run opposed, or they have open seats because they can't fill them. become one of them. That way you have some influence. So I've actually know a number of people that have been elected to these things, or actually just got appointed, and now they have their voice of reason amongst all the unreasonable people there. Mailing programs. You can get flyers and pamphlets, and we designed a giant postcard to mail to people. So mailing programs are also important. Cover letters. My thought is, don't write a 20-page letter. Let the material you're sending. Many folks, you can't visit your state house. You can actually send us something like this in the mail with a short cover letter. Has a lot of impact, believe it or not, because people don't mail things too much today. Most of it's on cyberspace, so good old hard copy mailings are still a good thing to do. Information tables at fairs, at flea markets, at homeschool shows. You need a little bit of organization. You need to have a banner maybe, and have some material, have a clipboard, maybe a petition, to get out of ICLEI to whatever. So information tables, and you have to make sure, okay, how long is this event? If it's a fair, it may be a weekend, it may be a 10-day event. Well, I got to have the people to man it. That's why it's so important to organize, have many people, not just a lone wolf. Lone wolf's all well and good, but if we're going to beat this thing, we have to organize, because the other side organizes very effectively. That's why they've been able to accomplish what they've accomplished. Okay, so yeah, gun shows, Tea Party rallies. A lot of Tea Party. I go to these Tea Party rallies, and if there is a table from a local group, they may have a pamphlet, they may have a T-shirt or a hat, or an occasional bumper sticker. You don't usually see any material, but we have the material, and if you're looking for it, contact us. Street fairs are usually one-day events, 8 in the morning to 4 o'clock at night, or what have you in the afternoon. And that's a little easier because you can even do the whole thing yourself. A 10-day fair from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., that's a little tough for one person to do. But something like this, you can do it with just 2 or 3 people. How about put up a table in your front of your post office or in your local park? You see, July 4th, we have tables in Boston Common. Plan and promote a future event. So we advertise with flyers. So if you're going to have an information table, it's important to have something to invite people to. So if they come by the table, they pick up a flyer, a pamphlet, sign your petition. Oh, by the way, we're having an event here down at the Brunswick Library in a couple of weeks. So we're having an event here or there. So that's an important thing too. And also make sure, again, have a clipboard, get contact information, get them to write legibly their email address and their name, their what have you, their street address. Place literature in public places. You'll see libraries, lots of supermarkets have little places where you can put literature. Town halls have places to put literature. The folks on the other side do it all the time. Laundromats, especially in a college town here. And you see one of our pamphlets in the middle of all these other pamphlets here. So libraries, and I would say if your local library, you should adopt it. You should go in there once a week. And I wouldn't say put a big stack, but a handful, because some people may be taking them to throw them away. But go by there once a week, or maybe once every week to put the material there. And a flyer. Colleges, you have a college campus, adopt that. Go find student inboxes, the student organizations as well. There was a college in Vermont, it's actually an environmental law school, Vermont Law School, and they have public meetings. There's actually rooms that you can use, and while we're showing a video, I'm out there putting stuff in the student inboxes and the organizational inboxes, and they discovered that there's a lot of students that are conservative and free market oriented. They're going there to learn what the other side is doing. Town halls, general stores usually have places in the rural areas. They all have bulletin boards. Grocery stores, convenience stores, and in fact you want to find a sympathetic person who owns a store, many of them are, ask them if they can put a stack that maybe will even help you get them out. The hospital waiting rooms, you go for an appointment, make sure you have a little stack of magazines and pamphlets and brochures, right? Barbershops, beauty salons, and laundromats, especially in college towns. You go, a student brings he or she brings a load of clothes. After they finish with their smartphone, they get a little bored. Oh, they see an article, they see a magazine that's less than 20 years old. They may pick it up in life. Lots of people responded from us as a result of these things, right? How about hosting a presentation in your area, right? It could be a video presentation. Maybe I like to come in and do a presentation like this in your town, or many people. We have people all over the country. More and more people every day are doing this. So make sure that you do something like this. It's very important, because let's say if you don't do it, who will? You know about it. You know more about this issue now than most people in your community. So who else is going? The person who knows nothing about it is going to host a presentation? No. The person who knows a lot about it, or at least a whole lot more than most. And by the way, I'm learning stuff all the time. And I think once I learned at a certain level, I just say, oh my goodness, there's a whole lot of things I don't know much about. So it's an ongoing process too. So self-education, of course, is ongoing. Parades. This is a picture of a float we had, if the float's the right word, at a parade in the town of Dedham, Massachusetts. And this is why organization is important. We have a local chapter, and we knew this parade was a Flag Day parade. To say, hey, let's get a float there. So we had access to a suburban van. We had some signs already made up, and we had material. So we just had to fill that little application free of charge. Showed up. And we had a great time. We had about maybe 7 or 8 people in this, not a whole lot, thousands, several thousand people saw us, saw that the town belonged to Ickley, and right in front of us, by the way, was the Ickley vehicle, or I should say the Agenda 21 vehicle. And they don't say they're Agenda 21, of course, but when they saw us there, they worked very hard. And by the way, their vehicle was very unsustainable. It was about 10 times the size of our Suburban, as unsustainable as that may be. Resolutions, bills, and petitions. You may want to create your own if it's something specific, but you can look at models from other towns and cities, so you want to get the wording right. The John Birch Society has a specific petition for Ickley, so if your town belongs to Ickley, and you can actually download it from, go to our website and download it. Bills, model bills. Right now, here in February of 2013, there's probably 7 or 8 states that have sponsored bills that either kick Ickley out of that state, and actually was passed in Alabama last year, 2012, Maine, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, Arizona, and many others. I can't name them all. Michigan have bills, and I actually got a model, the one that passed in Alabama, and I actually cater to each state, and you can find that up on cyberspace too. So, so funds. Now that's a tough thing, because lots of people are afraid to ask folks for money. You're going to be getting DVDs and flyers. If you bring in a speaker, there's going to be some cost to that. So we all know there's no such thing as a free lunch. So we need to get in the habit of asking fellow patriots to help. So when you raise funds, you need to have a clear objective. You have to ask people, hey, we're bringing in speaker so-and-so. We're going to reprint 1,000 of these. We're going to buy these DVDs and give them to these folks. Or we're going to duplicate the DVDs. That you should get permission if that's necessary, right? Or do a mailing, a postage. You need money for that. Donations can include signs. If sign makers, some of them will be more than happy to. You see the sign here that we did on Ickley. We had a sign maker friend of mine was more than happy to do that, you see. There are a lot of people that have photocopy machines, and they're more than happy to say, I'll be able to print you out a couple of 100 flyers, you see. Or they've got DVD duplicating devices, and they'll do that too. Communicate with the donors and make a report of the event on the social media sites and your email contact list. We had a very exciting event in New Hampshire. It was a day of, we had 3 events back in January of 2013. We brought in Dr. Michael Kaufman. He spoke to the New Hampshire, about 60 to 70 state legislators. So we had to buy them lunch. And then, not just Dr. Kaufman, but I mean the legislators. It was a luncheon that we had to pay for. And we had elected officials there. Then we had a book signing session, and in the evening we had a presentation in the public library. Well, there wasn't a lot of expense, but we had to pay for the lunch. We needed, about $2,000, or almost $2,000. So we called a few people up, sent out a few emails out. We raised it. The people who donated the money couldn't attend, but we made sure they knew, that their investment was well worth it, and they were very delighted. And then we can come back and ask them again, because they'll be happy to help out again, because they knew that they made a difference with their generosity. So don't be reluctant. You have to ask, because if you don't ask, you're not going to get, for the most part. But there are a lot of people out there. A lot of people in the business community will be more than happy to help you out if they understand the problem, understand the issue. Okay. tools. Oh, by the way, the John Birch Society has a little, it's not published in hard copy, it's available on the internet, how to get it's a little manual, how to kick Agenda 21 out of your town. And you go right to the JBS website, jbs.org/issues, and stop Agenda 21, and you can find the download there. It's about 20 pages, and you can download it and make available. Videos, DVDs, and YouTube, and Vimeo, all kinds of good material out there. Just do a search for Agenda 21, you're going to find all kinds of good things. And the shorter, in my opinion, the better. You send someone a 5-hour video, not too many people are going to watch it. So reprints, model bills and resolutions, banners and posters, these are all important tools. Now, the John Birch Society, one of the things I do, and by the way, if you're involved in the Tea Party group or some other group, I don't suggest you stop your participation there. Work harder, build that group, okay? But the John Birch Society has a few things that other groups may not have. One of them is a full-time field staff. We have folks like me around the country that work to organize activities, to help educate and motivate people. We do have chapters all over the country. We don't have enough right now. That's why we need more people to join and become chapter leaders. We have an action plan. We have a plan. It's not just, ain't it awful, nothing you can do about it, and you go home and you just lament, okay? We produce tools, DVDs, booklets. We have a great magazine called the New American Magazine, and not just on Agenda 21, but many other issues. And we have over 50 years of experience. We have people who know how to do these things. So it's not brand new to them, you see. So we recommend that you join us in our proud companionship in our epic undertaking. And I'm optimistic that we're going to turn the tide here, folks. We've been at this for many years, and people say, oh, it's too late, they've gone too far. But that's not the case. And if we quit, they win. And I've got some reasons why. They're called children. And I want to be able to at least pass the baton of relative freedoms to them and let the next generation get us back under the Constitution. So with that, I want to thank you, and God bless you.